Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game, the podcast where I, your host, Connor McCabe, bring on a guest to hear from them about a meaningful or memorable video game from a particular moment in their life. We dive into as much about what made playing this video game special as we do the context and the setting of when it had this impact on them. It's a podcast about what makes video games special to different people. A little bit of housekeeping up top is that anything that my guest or I plug today on the podcast, you're going to be able to find a link in the show notes. So as much as you might be feverishly pulling out your notes app to take down a Patreon that we have or a social media account to follow, don't stress about that. If you click the episode, whether you are watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast catcher, scroll down. There's going to be some nice links that I've made in the show notes. And your appreciation for me is only going to grow when you see how gorgeously organized those things are. But yeah, speaking of which, when this episode comes out, we're going to be on the cusp of our next Games Club over at Super NPC Radio releasing. We are covering Resident Evil 4 Remake in our weekly book club style format that releases on our Patreon, which is a place where if you are a fan of the show and you want bonus podcasts and you want to support us, you can support us at $5 a month to get our Games Club. There's a bunch of other crap up there. There's a free tier too. So if you want to just jump in the Discord and talk to some wonderful people about video games, join the free tier and we'll send you a little link. But yeah, our Games Club is coming up. I'm really excited. I finally dove in for the first time myself the other day. And let's just say I've come down with La Plaga, folks. I'm hooked. But you can find that in a link in the show notes to our Patreon. Without further ado, I'll introduce our guest for today's episode. Please welcome to the microphone, writer Jason Cohn.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me. Is this too close to the mic? Am I being too warm? Maybe I can back up a little bit.
I'm really liking it. If you could throughout the pod just like sort of go back and forth like this, I'm realizing it might have a different connotation at this point, but just have very varying volumes and directions.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a green screen behind me and I'm just going to move my head forward and back and I'm just going to trust that no one's going to do anything with this video.
Cool. You know what?
Okay.
I'm going to join you. I'm not going to leave you on an island. We're going to do the same thing the whole time.
Okay, great.
Jason, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad to have you today. And thankfully you didn't leave earlier when I described your jersey as a red sweater. For the YouTube viewers know exactly what I'm talking about. So thanks for sticking around and not bailing on this.
You're welcome. I mean, I am full of rage, but I'm going to keep going through it. Anyway, so I appreciate
thought I could sort of feel a little bit of that behind like your what appears to be a calm demeanor, just like the burning
I'm hot
fire.
right now. I am hot.
Sweating on this Tuesday morning. I'm so glad to have you today on the episode. You and I know each other. We've known each other for I guess that would be 2.5 years at this point, technically, because we met, or was that? When was that night where we went to the first ASCAP act? Was that 22 or 23? I think it was 23.
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah, it was Will Ferrell.
Yes.
Opened ASCAT again. Everybody was like, UCB's back, baby.
Yes.
And our mutual friend, Lisa Gilroy, was performing. I play soccer with her husband, Steven.
Sweet boy.
And couldn't be sweeter. I mean, like a lot of people are like, oh, Canadians are so disrespectful and rude. But Steven really, I think, is doing it for the Canadians. He's bringing their reputation back up.
Yes.
But then, of course, Lisa balancing it back out. Lisa notoriously difficult.
Yes, everyone. I mean, outside of being and we know most people who are as talented as Lisa just going to be an absolute just drag to be around. Isn't kind at all.
Absolutely. No.
And here I am just like holding back the urge to tell a story about how Lisa made me feel so welcome on Herald Night, but I'm going to let this reality just stay what it is. But I genuinely, coming into this, knowing we're going to talk, I was really excited to be like, hey, remember how we met through our buddy Steve that one night? I do remember too, because we went to the show. We went and got dinner at Birds afterwards and sat down. And I remember video games eventually came up because of course they do if I'm talking to somebody. And I remember you telling me, you're like, I like these indie games like Disco Elysium.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit different. Some people, they just see the path in front of them and they'll walk down it. But I'm the kind of person that's like, what's that over there? That looks like a
Yeah.
different path. I guess that's kind of where I'll be.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's something about myself that I both love and hate because I really do fall into that indie guy category in ways that I'm so uncomfortable with. Someone's like, oh, you probably like this, and that, and I'm like, yeah, actually,
Yeah.
I do. I do really like Animal
I
Collective.
hate that you have
Like,
me pinned.
yeah, I do love Japan, and I am a white guy. That is true.
Yes. I am
Yeah.
falling into all the stereotypes you might think.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, I am an indie game supporter, I will say,
Mhm.
just in general, in the same way that I really appreciate, what you do at UCB, and I really appreciate film and TV and music that is taking a swing. That's something that we can get into later, but I really like, community-based art
Mm.
forms and people coming from a place that isn't trying to sell pharmaceuticals in between ads.
Yeah.
Anyone who's trying to do something interesting in their own path, I'm like, I'm going to be biased towards. I like giving
Yes.
those people credit and trying to
Yeah.
like, all right, let's give you a shot. You deserve it.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely, I hate to say it. It's relatable and it only makes you more likable. And I really was hoping to not let that happen today.
I'll find a way. Don't worry. We've got
Okay.
we've got another hour to go. I'll
Ooh,
alienate everybody on this call
please
before.
sprinkle in some condescension, if I can even say. I almost said condensation. I don't want any of that. I've gotten us off the beaten path a little bit. That's how we know each other. We've continued to just like, I would say mostly run into each other over the last
Yeah.
couple of years, whether it be you going to a show, us seeing each other around the theater. Yeah, that's like, I feel like I filled in a lot of the context, haven't I?
You crushed it.
Huh, huge.
Yeah, you're on a roll this morning.
That's all I really need. And me only
Yeah.
like slightly feeling like not severely, but like a tiny bit hungover from the final Herald hang of the year, just a little bit. I got enough sleep. I got a little walk. I got a little food, but it's there. So if there's the synapses aren't firing like they usually are, there's my built-in excuse.
Right. And then I'll take over host duties and you can
Please.
relax for a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I mean, I know we've talked a little bit about how we know each other, but is there anything you want to share about yourself? Anything you want to plug? What context do you want to fill in for the listener, or do you want to remain a mystery?
Wow. I mean, when you put it like that, who wouldn't choose mystery? It sounds so much cooler. But yeah, I'm from Sydney, Australia. Shout out to all of our Australian listeners. I think you've got the Prime Minister listens. We've got
Yes.
Margot Robbie's listening.
Oh,
The Auntie Donna boys in Melbourne. I'm sure
yes.
that they're big fans.
Can I jump in to just
Please.
brag real quick and say I do have a connection to Margot Robbie?
Okay.
So-
Oh, sorry. You guys dated for quite a while, right?
Quite a when we were young, quite young,
Right,
She
right.
has a type, and it's whatever I am. So you actually have something in common with Margot Robbie outside of being from Australia. It's that you both have watched me perform on the UCB stage.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The first show I ever did on the Franklin stage outside of class was with this group I was on called the Interns, and one of our friends and performers on our team was like childhood best friends with her and did the same like soap opera back in the day. So she came to
Neighbours?
support her. Couldn't tell you
Right.
what
Yeah.
it's called. Couldn't
It's
tell you.
usually Neighbours Are Home and Away, and then they
Yeah.
go straight from that to being a blockbuster star.
Yeah.
It's like we're the immigrants taking all of your jobs.
You know what? And suddenly it sounds so great, doesn't it? Yeah, she goes to be starring alongside DiCaprio. But anyway, I couldn't help myself but be like, oh, I have a connection here. She watched me do improv once.
No, that is really cool. I mean, it's funny to think how many big people have slipped into a UCB show, which is like
Yes.
a 100-person theater
Yeah, something
or
like
something
that.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, wow, you are incredibly famous and powerful. And
What are you doing
you're
here?
watching me desperately search to pull a premise from someone's monologue
Yes.
about their prom.
Gosh. Yeah.
You're
and
watching
just-
me on the back line being like, okay.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I've had plenty of great shows at that theater. That was not one of them. I was
really?
scared. I was like thinking about the show
Oh, your
all
first
day.
show wasn't one of them?
Yeah, I know. Can you believe that? Wasn't out the gate with a banger, but I steered us away from you talking about yourself. So I've already made it about me, which is my
Yeah.
lot in life.
Yeah. I'm just a writer. I'm just some guy came over here with a dream and have fully achieved it. There's nothing left for me to do.
Mm.
I've been in development a couple times, and they haven't been made, and that was my choice. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I want to get a show on the air." Not me. My
No.
favorite thing is have someone being like, "We're so excited to make it," and then progressively over a year, just reply to you less and less, and then it fizzles out. That's
Hmm.
my thing.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I'd much
I've achieved it.
prefer that to like a hard no or like a clear answer on something. I'd love to just
Yeah.
I'd love when it sort of does slowly dissolve and it's like a slow pain.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Because then I don't have to let my mom down. I don't have to be like, oh, they said no. Technically, I
Yes.
can be like, oh, well, yeah, they're just sort of slowing down right now. Must be, it's Arbor Day. You know how LA gets around Arbor Day. Everything slows down.
She
But yeah,
understands.
I'm a writer, comedian, improviser, fan of Connor McCabe's podcast, and
Huge.
you know what? A little bit gamer. Never thought I'd
Hey,
call myself that, but kind of am actually.
look at you
I know.
taking on the role, getting us back to where we should be. That was a really
Yeah,
nice segue into the next thing I'm going to do, which
go
before
ahead.
we talk about your history as a video game enjoyer, will you introduce
Hmm.
what you brought on for the main event and call me by your game?
Limbo.
Gorgeous. Can't wait to talk about it. Uh, well, let's get into it, Jason. Do you remember what some of your earliest memories enjoying video games, whether that be playing or watching someone else?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I have a dad who I can only be described as very Kramer pilled. Like Kramer. Are you a Seinfeld person?
Yes.
So, my dad is a lot like Kramer if he had, if he didn't have a successful friend that he could mooch off
Uh-huh.
and his actions had real life consequences.
Oh,
And he
okay.
also had two small children that he had to try to raise. So in real life, it's very different. It's wacky. And one of those things was that he had a lot of gadgets. I think
Mm,
partially because he was fascinated just by like, the future of science and technology. He would
yes.
like find old Wired magazines that people have thrown out and like read them. And he was a little bit of a tinfoil hat guy in that
Okay.
way. But because of that, we had very early like MS DOS situation in his apartment that we would go to, every second weekend
Ooh.
or whatever the situation was. So there was this game called Gorillas that was like a
Huh.
very early MS DOS game where you pick your velocity, your speed, and your angle, and you throw bananas like from one top of the building, King Kong style, to another building. And it's not like motion; it's like you type it in, and then it executes the action. You see it hit something, and then it affects the building or breaks the building in some way. And that was like a very early like MS. It wasn't color, so there
Okay.
was color, but it was like it was more text based gaming with visual representation. That early
Yes.
stage. And then when we started going to the library, Waverly Library, and Wallara, sorry, I didn't mean to leave out Wallara, Paddington 2, technically, Prince of Persia, the 1989 version,
Oh, yes.
where you're sneaky, sneaky, get to the ledge, and you're like, whoa, and then you can stop, and then you jump.
Yes.
And then you're grabbing onto things, you're avoiding being spiked. The story is not like super clear to someone who's 6,
Yes.
but it was like, okay, we are in a Aladdin type of situation. It is it was like a very difficult game for me as a child to like
Hmm.
work out what to do mostly. And you could only play for as long as you could hire out the computer at the library. So you only get to maybe a quarter of the way through the game at best, depending on
Yes.
your negotiation skills, with your parent. At Wallara Library, it was Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. I think this
Oh,
also would have been
yeah.
one of the early 90s games. Were you a San Diego kid?
I remember one, I can't remember exactly what version it was, but I played one where she like went to the Panama Canal one summer. It was like I kind of got away with playing it as like part of like my education going into the school year of like
Totally.
you have to read a certain amount over the summer was my mom's thing was like you have to read a
Yeah.
certain amount and that counted towards I don't know some check mark I had to reach.
Oh no, I'm learning when I'm playing Carmen San Diego. I remember see, this is like when I started playing Pokemon a lot, like a few years later. My dad was like, "Oh, it teaches you about evolution." And I was like, yeah, totally. 100%. That's exactly what's happening.
I love that
I need
that was a
100 booster packs. Sorry, go on.
yeah, it's gonna help me learn even harder.
Yeah, yeah.
That is funny that it's just a funny detail because I feel like some parent, like especially like religious parents in the United States, would have been like, you can't play that because there's evolution.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yeah, exactly, exactly. My dad being into science did help in that way, you know. But
Yes.
it's like with all media, like you have parents who typically were like one way or the other, and some were just sort of a bit more neutral on it. But like my mom was the opposite with The Simpsons. She was like, "Oh, this is like so crude and blah blah blah." Not for any religious reasons, just like a little bit, not
Oh,
into that kind of stuff.
I
And
wasn't
looking
allowed.
back, it's like, oh, sorry, go on,
Oh, I was going to make it about me again, which is important. I was going to say
please.
to resonate with you on that, or to relate to you. I wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons because Bart was rude to his parents, according to my mom, and she didn't want me to be like that. But I turned out to be the biggest smartass anyway. So I
Yeah,
was like a
yeah, yeah,
walking Macaulay Culkin as a baby. So like, what did she? I was already there. What was?
yeah.
Why not just let me watch it anyway?
I also love that like Homer straight up chokes Bart. Like it just does full on domestic violence and like
Yes.
stuff like that. And is an functional alcoholic and all of
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. And they're like, this Bart character, that's the problem. Like the dad of the family being like, I've watched The Simpsons, and my opinion is that Bart is the problem and
Yes.
Marge nags too much.
That's
That's
so
my
funny.
opinion.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Um, yeah, but I love the idea of a kid sort of like, really being like, oh yeah, no, I'm doing this. This is not fun for me. I'm
Hmm.
doing this because this is work. I'm going to work. And sometimes, by the way, with some games when you're a kid, that is a little bit how it feels like. It's like, okay, I don't like you, you don't like me to this game. Let's just get fucking through this. Like, let me beat this level, please. You're not really enjoying it a lot of the time. Like, you're just like, how do I really get past this level? I'm so frustrated.
Yes.
So it
We're
does
kind of
teach
like all we
resilience.
each other have is me in this game, and it's like it's better than the alternative
Yeah.
of whatever I'd be doing.
Exactly. I was trying to go through the recesses of my mind when I was thinking of coming on this pod when
Hmm.
you invited me on. And another one was this game called Spin Doctor. Now, there's no way that many people have played this game. It's another MS-DOS game. It's only dots, like in a grid, and then lines that move in a robotic way. And you have
Yes.
to move one line to other dots. Did you play this game?
No, but I am nodding along as if I could
It's
have.
it's sort of like it's almost like a rhythm game in that you have to move it as it's moving. You have to connect it to different dots and get it to a certain place. There was
Weird.
this yeah, very weird. There was this like play center in Bondi Junction in Sydney that my parents would sort of like send me to get my ADHD out for like 3 hours, and they had computers set out, and that was one of those games. And
Oh,
I had no idea what the point was, but I remember just like going through the motions of playing. And the first time that I was like, okay, I'm playing a game, I want to win this game, I kind of know what's going on, was probably Lemmings.
okay.
I don't know if you're a Lemmings head,
No,
but
I'm
it was
familiar with it,
like,
but I've never played.
yeah, but it was super fun. You just your job is to shepherd these sort of little creatures into their deaths in order to save a bunch of them and get through these worlds. Other early ones would have been Worms World Party. That was like a good multiplayer game.
Is that?
Worms, like Worms 3D, where you're like it's a turn-based game where you play as a worm and you're like killing each other.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
kind of
It's like kind
thing.
of like sort of a military strategy
Yes,
series. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure it was initially set up in some way to recruit young children into the military.
That's
Speaking of
so
The
many
Simpsons,
recruiter stories. Is just like I
yeah.
played Worms, and it radicalized me to be to serve. I don't know. Don't have a good character pitch for that. What were you gonna say?
Oh no, exactly. It's just like in real war when you're like, okay, I shot my gun. Now it's your turn to shoot your gun.
Yeah.
I'm not going to retaliate or defend myself. You go ahead.
Yes. Oh, I have a pistol, and you have a rocket launcher.
Yeah. That was the same thing with Pokemon, where it was like just trying to imagine it, where it's like one of you attacks the other, and the other Pokemon's like, wow, that was such a strong attack. Okay, now you stand perfectly still, and I'm going to literally light you on fire.
Yes.
The other Pokemon's like, all right, but
It is that
I hope I
Pokemon's
survive.
turn.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Speaking of The Simpsons, and I don't even know if this counts as a game. You can tell me because you're probably an expert on what counts as a game. The Simpsons Cartoon Studio,
Um,
where
I imagine this is a program where you can make your own
Yes.
Simpsons cartoons?
Correct. It
I
had
would.
pre-built-in audio and cells that you can join up. It's settings like the house, Moe's bar, all of this kind of stuff. And you can try to create your own episode. And it was so difficult to use. It was excruciating to like try to make it work, especially as a child. And that was critically like what came out. Like later on, I saw all the reviews of it, and they're like, this game is basically like completely non-functional. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that counts as a
I
game.
would say kind of. And the game, so on episode 100, my producer, Jeremy, acted as host for me to come on as the guest. And I talked about a game called Microsoft 3D Movie Maker, which is also like a movie making program. Not
Right.
really a game, but kind of.
Yeah, yeah. It's more of just this will take up some of your time. I don't even know
Yes.
what to call. I guess it's like a software. Other games at that point, like early history was, and this is again credit to my wacky dad, who, not a good parent, but good at hoarding electronics.
Hmm.
So we had a NES and
Hmm.
I played Duck Hunt. I remember that. Also a game just called tennis and baseball. That's when games were just called that.
Yes.
So stuff like that, up, down, left, right, A, B, and that's all you really needed.
Are you
As
getting
I
now
oh, sorry, go on,
in
go on.
Australia? Or are you getting PAL region stuff?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So for example, like my early Nintendo 64 memory is Lilac Wars that you guys
Yes,
call
that's
Star
right.
Fox 64
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So there were some disadvantages in that, like big things in the American market we might miss or it might take a while, but we also might get a little bit early like Japan stuff
Yes.
that US might not get in some way. But I don't know how much of an advantage or disadvantage it was. Like for example, one big thing that we had was Sega World. So
Huh.
Sydney had a theme park, an entire theme park that was Sega, that was indoors, that was part rides, arcade, live show, like Disney style live show, restaurant, birthday party venue. It was like an iconic venue with this like giant blue dome in the middle of Sydney Harbor. You couldn't miss it for many years. It has since passed, sadly.
Did they have like
Um,
characters walking around like pregnant Sonic?
Pregnant Sonic? No,
Do you
please tell me about Pregnant Sonic.
do you not know about this internet phenomenon? People just like to draw Sonic the Hedgehog and he's pregnant. That's all there really is to that.
No, but I love that. Very forward thinking. No, but it was a live stage show with Dr. Robotnik and Tails and everything like that. And obviously, if you're a child, it's like, holy shit. Like, I cannot believe like the Dr. Robotnik is here. Like, I'm personally concerned and nobody else seems concerned, but Sonic's probably
Yes.
got this handled. Um, and food that was probably made of rat and pigeon
Hmm.
meat and stuff like that, so awful. But it was an amazing thing to have. And I think that's probably in some way connected to the Japan, like Oceania
Ah,
Pacific
yes.
situation, because Sega was bigger. Like I remember my friend had a Genesis and they
Mm.
had Sonic. I never had it, but I always thought of Sega as being like, whoa, it's like a different world.
Yes. Yeah. There's something about like not having access to a console as a kid, but your friend has it, and
Yeah.
just
Oh,
constantly imagining what they're doing on it.
it's always like a misbehaved cousin or family friend that has like games that you don't like. I'm remembering now because I was like a bad kid, but really like I wasn't that bad. I just like had ADHD. But I remember like my family friend who's like a bad kid, and they
Hmm.
had Killer Instinct on the Super Nintendo,
And
and I
that's
was
why it was
like,
bad, right?
what is this? Oh
Yes.
no, 100%. Yeah, no, he started as a pure innocent child. Our world is perfect as it is. Parents do an excellent job parenting their
Hmm.
children, but video games are the problem. Video
Yeah.
games are why we have what we have. Um, I really don't want to get into politics right now, but there's a lot of stuff going on that I think it's pretty obvious that they came from video
You
games.
can trace the butterfly effect of the first joystick ever made to the fascistic overtaking reality that we have right now. So
100%, yeah. So when I went over to their place and was playing Killer Instinct, it was like titillating. It's like the equivalent of like seeing like a naughty photo for the first time or something like that. Seeing something super violent in a game, being like, oh my god, what are you doing to that other guy? Holy
yeah.
shit! Like the fatalities in Mortal Kombat, stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I never had Super Nintendo access. Super Mario World 2, stuff like that. That was always like, that's their business.
Yes.
Like, frankly, that's none of my business. You can take care of that. The first big, like, I'm obsessed with gaming was the Nintendo 64 for sure.
Okay, nice. What were
Yeah.
some like standouts for you on that console? Because that was the first console I ever felt like ownership over as well.
Same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
I mean, obviously Super Mario 64, right? That's obviously because it came with the game, like for I think for most people, but not for all people.
Yes.
Because I think some people got Wave Racer, some people got GoldenEye. I think there was even like a Pokemon Stadium one eventually when Pokemon
Oh,
was bigger. Was
yeah.
Pokemon I think was bigger after the 64 came out.
Yes.
Um, but Super Mario 64, I never beat the game as a child.
Uh-huh.
And I do not understand how anyone as a child finds those 8 red coins in like some of these. Like, how did you do it? Like, this is pre internet
Yeah.
being as big, as it was pre YouTube. So, anybody who actually earnestly beat the game, please comment on this video. As a child, if you beat Super Mario 64, like you need to be studied. Like we
Yes.
need to harness that genome because you're a genius. um, but it was like it was incredible. I mean, there was so much game in it. Like there was so many different worlds, so many different mechanics, underwater, flying, different hats that you can wear, so many different ways to earn those stars.
Yes.
There was the spooky stuff and the castles, the Bowser stuff, the mini games. It was so big. It could have been just that, and that would have been worth the console. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is a game. This is in my top like three personal favorite games of all time. I could talk about this. We've done a whole games club on it. I'll send you a link to our. It's on the free feed now, Jason. We did like 12 episodes on this game. Where in that
Wow.
game was the reason that we changed our games club format. We used to cover like one game at a time in sort of an overview format, and we do like back in the day we did a Zelda games club, so we talked about like 17 Zelda games in a year,
Yeah.
which
Wow.
a was too much to do because we were beating like 2 games a month, and we did not have time for that.
Yeah.
But what happened was I was like dicking around on Super Mario 64 one day and just thinking about how on that format we never got the chance to talk about how weird it is that the toads tell you they like are trapped inside the castle walls because you just don't have time for that on an hour and a half to 2 hour episode about the game. But if we did a series where it was like a book club, we could talk about all the weirdest shit. Like we did one on the original Pokemon games. We didn't have
Mm.
even enough time to talk about all the weird NPCs in that game and the things they say to you. So I I bring this up just to say like I couldn't echo that more of how special that game is and how much there was as kids to like get out of it and unpack or imagine, you know? There was so much that the game had so much in it, but there was even more that I was just wondering like what else is possible here? What am I missing? What is this going on in this world? So,
Yeah, and I mean, even graphically, I was like, oh well, this is as good as it's ever gonna get. Like this is absolutely stunning. I mean,
yes.
Princess Peach looks like a real person. Like, am I
Yes.
seeing real? Um, and yeah, just how different the worlds were. Yeah, totally. I mean, this isn't the hottest take in the world, right? That Super
No,
Mario
yes.
64 is an amazing game, but like I got it way later in life again. Actually, it was like roughly after the time I played Limbo, and we can get into
Oh,
that a little bit later. But I posted on Facebook at the time, and I was like, "Hey, does anybody have a Nintendo 64?" And my friend gave me their 64 and all of their games, and I, using
whoa.
the help of YouTube, beat the game. But
Yes.
I couldn't do it on my own. I couldn't find all that 8 red coins on like certain things. Like I would get to like 110 stars, and I was like, I
Yeah.
genuinely am going to go insane. I don't know
Yes.
where these are. Um, and that was an amazing feeling to like close the
See
loop on
it.
that. I was like,
Yes.
I did it. I did it for you, mini version of me.
Yes.
Uh, yeah. So Lilac Wars, like I said before, which
Hmm.
I think is Star Fox 64.
It is.
And what
Yes.
I love about that game is it's 4 player. It's 4 player in a real way where you're all contributing very like uniquely to it, and it's 4 very distinct characters as well. Um, that was really
And you
cool.
mean as in
And
like the multiplayer is four
yes,
player and then of
well,
course the
it's
four main
both.
characters.
So it's both. So you can play like against each other in like a four
Yes.
player like battle royale, but you can also play together in the mission mode and try to beat the
Really?
game. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I mean, I could be misremembering completely, but you can definitely go at least like two of you.
That's
Might be four.
unreal. Oh my gosh.
The stories that each of the character had were, it was very Top Gun-esque in like how they were all, you know, coming from different angles but trying to serve the same goal.
Yeah,
So I
like the
love that.
archetypes they're all
Yeah,
portraying.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like one of them like very, very scared, and one of them like a bit more gruff. Obviously, do a barrel roll is like the classic line, you know.
That
Um,
whole game is just full of quotes that I think of on a daily basis. And I didn't even like my best friend, that was the game he had, but I still can't get there's countless quotes. Anyway,
like what? Like give me a couple. Give me a taste.
like I really like when you're fighting this, I don't remember, it's like the second level maybe where you fight this sort of mech guy in an open, it kind of opens up into like a space where you can roam around into all range mode into that.
Right.
But the quote is there's this guy, you beat these two little mech guys, and this third bigger one shows up and he goes, "Don't party just yet." And it's so good. The acting. Have you heard this comes up occasionally. Have you heard the uncompressed versions of the voice recording for that game?
No.
I gotta find a link to share with you because
Yeah.
eventually they made like they discovered, I think in like a Nintendo leak, the non-compressed versions, and to hear the high quality it's almost disturbing how good the quality is because it feels like it should be compressed, but it'll just open up a whole new side of your brain, I think.
Isn't it so funny how these quotes from these old games will like stick with you
Oh
way
yeah.
past the games
Yeah.
themselves? Like there's this game, True Crime Streets of LA, which we spoke about that
Oh
I
yes, that's
was
right.
considering doing that. Did you ever play True Crime? Did you
No,
ever play
I'm
that
not even
game?
familiar. Tell me about your time with it and whatever is an
It's
anecdote you're getting to.
it's so similar to GTA
Uh-huh.
that it's like, you know, in a copyrighty way, maybe complicated, I'm sure, for them in some way. But it was a very successful game. But it's similar. Like you play as a cop in this game. You're trying to solve a crime. It's about the Yakuza and like different crime bosses in LA. So it's like a noir, gritty detective
Okay.
sort of story. But it was funny. It was funny in like a real way that they knew that they were being funny, and that was the first time that I was like, oh, games can be funny like The Simpsons is funny. Like they get
Huh.
that they're wacky. Because there was a cut scene where one of like a security guard that you have to take out was like doing a number one against a wall outside of a door. You know, they were just peeing against a wall. So you sneak up behind them and you karate chop them on the top of the shoulder, which
Uh-huh.
renders them unconscious, which I guess, you know, that's like a Jackie Chan style movie type of thing. And he falls over like straight into the wall and then falls down. And the character says, "You have the right to soak in your own urine." And I was like, that like I died. I was like, I kept replaying. I was like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. So
And it
that
just
quote will
stuck
stick
with
with me
you
forever.
forever.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's such good writing, right?
On your deathbed, you're gonna be spewing that out to
Yeah,
your predecessors or your
exactly.
predecessors, your children. Um,
Yeah.
that's
So
incredible.
I know, right? What a quote. And I use it in my head, but I haven't found a time in real life to be able to say that. Yeah, you know,
Yes.
like if my friend of mine like maybe pees their pants or something like that, I'll be able to use it. I've got it locked and loaded. This
Yes.
is the problem. So much of my RAM is keeping that quote at the front of my mind, but it's
Hmm.
so rarely going to come in handy that my other processing is lagging. So I don't
Yes.
really have a lot else going on in my brain besides from just being like ready to cut in with that line.
And you don't want to sacrifice
Um,
it, delete it because then the chance is going to come for you to use it and it's going to be gone.
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever had a moment where you've thought of the perfect comeback to someone after it's happened? Have you ever
Pretty
had
much
that?
every comeback I've ever had is delayed.
Do you remember one in particular that you were like, I wish I would have said that?
Not off the top of my head, but if the amount of conversations I have after they happen is just too high.
I had one which was like I was you know, when I was 18 in the club, and on the way home I was wearing a wraparound scarf, kind of similar to like a keffiyeh actually.
Hmm.
And there was a police officer who was at the train station, you know, trying to bust people who were underage or whatever. And he was like, nice scarf, you know, in like a kind of really weird way.
Yes.
And I was really hurt by that. And then I went home and then I like woke up that night and was like, what are you, the fashion police? And I literally I literally called my friends to tell them that, and they were like, "Yeah, well, it's okay. It doesn't matter.
Too late,
Didn't
buddy.
say it. Yeah, too late. I'm sorry."
Oh, that
So
would have
we
been great.
lived.
That's what I would use time
Would have
travel
been
for,
great.
not to
Yeah.
solve the world's problems, not to kill Hitler, but to go back and just have the comebacks be when I needed them.
No, you're on record saying that you would help raise Hitler to be even stronger than he was.
I would train him. Yes. Hyperbolic time
Train him in
train.
art so that he would go into like full-time visual art
Yeah,
instead
get
of
him away
his other thing,
from taking
from the
over.
other stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
We lived next to a video rental store that also had games. So I didn't own 100 games, but we rented a lot of games.
Yes.
And that puts the pressure on to
Oh,
like
big time.
beat it really quickly. But F-Zero X, SSX Tricky, I remember, and that was also what introduced me to Run DMC.
What are you playing
Wayne,
that on? Are you a GameCube,
64.
PS2?
No, this is all 64.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. Wayne Gretzky's 3D hockey.
wow.
Yeah, Yoshi's Story. I
Hmm.
remember. NBA Jam was like one of my favorites.
Oh,
You
yeah.
get really hot, you couldn't miss from anywhere. That was super fun. Mortal Kombat. But the games that I would play most would be Mario Kart, Pokemon Snap. I played a lot of.
Oh,
I also love how peaceful that game is.
yes.
You're not hurting anyone.
The kids
You're
would
just sort of
say
minding your own
it's a
business.
vibe.
Pokemon Snap is totally about like you know how now there's like so much interest in ketamine therapy and like MDMA therapy. Doesn't it
This is
feel
how I
like
learned this.
doesn't it feel like Pokemon Snap would be part of that like situation? It's like if you need someone to feel okay, like doesn't sitting someone in front of Pokemon Snap feel like a good way
That's
to make
one
that
of the
happen?
remedies. Yes, it really should be.
Like it's
It,
so calming. You know what I mean?
Speaking of quotes in that game, I love hearing Professor Oak just go, "Welcome back. We're here. We're here." Um,
It works in so many ways,
It
right?
really does. Jason, I've got some
Yeah, go
questions
ahead.
for you because
Please
I feel like
ask
we could
away.
probably be here going through your entire history all day. So,
And we will.
so you're like, whether you like it or not, Connor. So, in order to hit a couple other moments that I want to before we get to our main event later, I'm going to jump ahead. So, the first question I want to ask you, since it sounds like you did a lot of gaming as a kid, what did you ever have like a sort of a dark period in gaming? When I say that, I mean, did you have a period where you stopped playing games or played a lot less than you ever did?
Yeah, and I think it might be the same for a lot of people, which is probably around 16 through 21, I would
Yeah,
say.
pretty common.
It's when like you start, thinking of yourself as a little bit more grown up, you're going to parties, you're doing your own thing. Or in my case, like not going to parties most of the time, but sometimes maybe. You go to uni, you start doing you get a job. There's like other things that come up, and maybe you start getting into film.
Ooh,
Maybe prestige TV enters your life.
yes.
So there's other things going on. I would say right around then, because at that point we had a PS2,
Okay.
and that served us well. A lot of Tekken Tag Tournament, Splinter Cell. We had a mod chip, so we had a lot of illegal
Ooh.
games on there, stuff like that. But yeah, at that point, I think I took a little bit of a break.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you?
I remember several points in my life. It was definitely like high school was around then. So yeah, I guess maybe like 15, but I was still playing games. I was still hitting a lot of the like main Nintendo stuff. Like if a Zelda game came out, I was still playing it pretty much. If the new Super Mario Galaxy came out, I was playing that. But getting into college, it was very rare that I was buying new games. I was basically just replaying old stuff like Smash Melee on repeat with my friends or Mario Kart 64 and and then I was basically had like 8 years where I was a very casual gamer. I never stopped gaming, but I just also wasn't looking for new titles. And the Nintendo Switch was what got me back into actively seeking out new
Hmm.
games, systems I didn't have, and now I've made it a whole part of my like work is video games. So that's how that happened to me. Did you have something that got you back into gaming after that?
Well, Connor, that's a funny question
Is it?
because I think it was Limbo.
Ooh, I love it. Um,
Yeah.
Well, then, a couple more questions for you.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
please.
the first of which is, have you had a recent gaming experience that you want to
Hmm.
highlight really quick?
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently playing Split Fiction with my
Oh,
partner.
yes.
Yeah. Are you and Amanda playing? Do we mention Amanda on this pod?
We do mention Amanda on the
Okay.
pod. Former
Hey,
former.
Amanda,
Hey,
former
she list
guest.
every episode she's listening. Um, we this is one I want to play with her, and that I was another friend was like talking because I played the previous title from this developer. I played
It
It
takes
Takes
two.
Two. I really liked the gameplay. I was like couldn't have disliked the story and characters more. And I hate to immediately just deride a game, but I've heard that Split Fiction has similar strengths and weaknesses. What do you think?
I agree, and I think a lot of this rests on what race do you think the book character is in
Oh,
It Takes Two?
isn't he like Spanish or something?
Right.
Something like that?
Yeah, I think that's the big contention is no one's 100% sure what's going on with that character specifically.
Yes.
They're like, this feels like the kind of thing that I shouldn't like,
Yes.
right? Like what, like, I'm just going to go ahead and hedge my bets that this is problematic in some way.
Yes. Yeah.
And it felt strangely so. Like it was so glaring. There were no other characters like it. So it really
Yes.
stood out that it was like, okay,
It's
interesting.
gonna
All
be
right.
like looking back at the elephant in Diddy Kong Racing or whatever. Because I think that character is like it's like a it's like an
Tell me,
Indian
I don't know
voice
about
done
this
by a
character.
white guy, and it's
Oh,
really thick.
Apu style. Okay,
Oh
got you.
yeah. So anyway, it's probably a similar thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I thought It Takes Two was really fun.
Yes.
And because I played it with my partner, who is not really a gamer, but she had an incredible time playing it. And during the gameplay, we would have like little disagreements about how to play in the same way that they would have it
Yeah.
in the game. I think that the way that they modeled the gameplay was so beautiful in
That
that way.
was
They
really
really,
impressive.
yeah. So that was cool. For someone who's a bit more of a hardcore gamer, I think it's maybe a little light for
Mm,
some people, maybe,
sure.
and Split Fiction has, some of the kind of dialogue that feels like you didn't take that long writing it, or you're intentionally making it so that 80 countries can play it.
Sure.
It
Yes.
it didn't feel like, it feels like a lot of these could have been copy pasted from different games or properties or scripts. And that's not just Split Fiction. There's so many TV shows like that, so many movies like that. You know, it's not their fault necessarily, but it would be nice to have the gameplay that I think is like pretty fun and tandem play and co-op play. That's an accessible level of difficulty.
Definitely.
I think that's important, if you're going to have it co-op and stuff like that. It would be nice to mix that with something that's like a truly, exceptional story. Because like the most recent thing that really hit me and has stuck with me since was Disco Elysium.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I mean,
Bringing us back to our sitting across from each other at birds.
exactly. Yeah, I think it's one of the best pieces of art of this century, of
Mm,
any form. And it's also like barely a game. Like if you want to use like what defines a game, we can get into that or something like that. But it is like a choose your own adventure walking simulator
yes.
with beautiful art and an incredible story. And I
Yeah.
think it's one of the only pieces of media that I think has been massively successful and also like truly feels culturally and politically sharp enough to
Mm,
contend with what is going on like in our world right now. And not in a way that's super blunt and obvious, in a way that's like really deep. It's just like I'm so invested in this story,
yeah.
in this town in Revachol. I'm so invested. It felt like reading a book, and that's the laziest thing that I could possibly say because I don't really read that much anymore. I should, but that's like it felt like I did read because I used all the text function,
Yes.
and I just because it's faster, and I did essentially read Disco Elysium.
That's true.
Um, so that one was so inspiring as well because it feels like sometimes I'll play a game and I'll feel like, well, why doesn't everybody just make games like this? It's like when I listen to a really good song or eat a really good meal or watch a really good improv performance, I'm like, well, that's the best, and then I'll
Yes.
see something else and be like, no, that's the best
Yeah.
or something like that. Um, And with Disco Elysium, that feeling has lasted the longest out of anything
Oh,
else that I've had recently,
yeah.
because it feels like we need media that is being, very like relevant to our time, but also allows me to dive in it. Like for example, do you watch The Boys, the show The Boys?
I've seen the first two seasons.
Okay, okay. I think you can leave it in my opinion.
Okay.
Because it's
It was
super
great.
fun.
Way exceeded my expectations. I kind of gave it a shot just for
Yeah.
fun, but anyway.
It is really fun,
Yeah.
and I think the first couple seasons do a great job, and then the last season, it's so over the top with its satire. It's not even satire, you know what I mean? It's like, well, you're not even like having fun with this anymore. You're just sort of
Mm,
like telling the audience how to be moral as a person,
I see.
and that's not as fun for me as it is when it's like you're in a world with imperfect characters making complicated
Yeah.
decisions,
Okay. Yes.
and you're both like, yes, I am a Western story style save the cat main character, but also I am conditioned by my surroundings, and
Yeah.
there is a greater superstructure involved in creating this story. It's sort of like a West meets East style of storytelling, and I
Interesting.
think I think Disco Elysium is like a mandatory playthrough for anybody who looks at the world around us and thinks this can't possibly be the best that we can do,
Yeah.
and wants to like dive into, okay, how does it feel to really like engage with these feelings and ideas and stuff like that.
Incredible. I've
Yeah.
been sold on this game so many times, and it's sitting in my little Steam library, but that
I
may be
bet.
the most like thorough selling I've ever had as far as like I would say specifically articulating some of the reasons why it was meaningful to you.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's so nutritious for me. It just will reward you for everything that you put into it, and that
Yes.
is something that I think all art should aspire to. I think that it's totally fine to be just entertainment. Like we need mindless entertainment, but you know, if it's one of those, like, if I could take X amount of things to a desert island, well, one of those things would probably be Disco Elysium.
Yes.
You know, if I was going to introduce the aliens to what life on Earth is like, that would be one of those things.
Yeah.
And it's also really, really fucking funny, like really, really funny. Yeah.
Dang.
Some of the guys from Chapo Trap House, the podcast, voiced some of the characters in the original. I
Oh,
don't think a lot of them made the deluxe version, but they definitely have like a very like comedic sensibility in a way that
okay.
isn't trying to pander. They're
Sure.
really just doing it in a way that you're like, wow, this feels like my favorite author wrote this or something like that. It
Yes.
feels too good to have been made in a lot of ways.
Wow.
Um, so I couldn't yeah, that would get my, full recommendation.
That's it was great because I was planning to ask you, if there was like another one that was so impactful recently to you. So you even just got us there. So thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for a couple things. For giving us such a nice, we got like such a thick front load of your history with games, how you got into them, what was meaningful to you. We got a little bit about your dark period, how you got back into it, but we like previewed that because we're about to get into
Yeah.
that. And then we talked about some recent stuff. So, Jason, I know we only hit like a fraction of your history with games, but thanks for sharing.
Yeah. You're very welcome. Thanks for having.
You bet. We're gonna go and take a quick break right now. But when we come back, we'll finally get into all things Limbo. So I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to Call Me by Your Game. Connor McCabe still here with Jason Cohn to discuss Limbo. Jason, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Happy to be back.
You're so welcome. Like I told you before the show, we're going to dive into a little history and context about the game Limbo before we talk about your personal history. So, as I start to monologue from a few paragraphs, if you want to jump in at any point and add some context for the game itself, you've got the green light, pal.
Okay. I'm going to be on the edge of my seat, ready to interrupt you.
Just like so eager. Well, without further ado, I'll go ahead and just get us into it. Limbo is a puzzle platform video game with horror elements developed by independent studio Playdead and originally published by Microsoft Game Studios for the Xbox 360. The game was released in July 2010 on the Xbox Live Arcade, and it has since been ported by Playdead to several other systems. Limbo is a 2D side-scroller incorporating a physics system that governs environmental objects and the player character. the player guides an unnamed boy through dangerous environments and traps as he searches for his sister. Something that I'll as I deviate away from this really quick, I I played through this game. I don't remember that at all. How do I not remember that? Is that something that you find out at the very end, or is that like explicit earlier on in the game, but with some like environmental storytelling?
You mean about specifically being the sister?
Yeah, I don't remember. Like,
No.
I don't remember that.
So at the end, the last scene is the girl that was taken away.
Okay, that's
But
probably
but there's no relationship like established in the world building, you know? I think you
yes.
can a little bit guess by maybe the age of the boy. There's probably not a wife or something like that, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe the developers have probably said in interviews before when they've elaborated on it or something, but that just stuck out to me as a surprise.
Yeah.
The developer built the game's puzzles expecting the players to fail before finding the correct solution. Playdead called the style of play trial and death and used gruesome imagery for the boys' deaths to steer the player from unworkable solution. The game is presented in black and white tones, uses lighting, film grain effects, and minimal ambient sounds to create an eerie atmosphere often associated with the horror genre. To describe I guess, the art style a little more specifically, it outside of the description we just had, the way I might describe it is it's sort of like all of the objects appear to be pretty flat. Like it's sort of a flat image, almost as if like they are made of like flat pieces of paper that were cut out for the objects, the player, the monsters that we might find in this game. Was there another way you might describe it? But that's the best way I can do it.
No, that's a great way to describe it. It's kind of like a collage type of
Yes.
thing. It's like layers of 2D elements on top of each other, but it is fully 2D.
Yes. Sort of like
Yeah.
almost as if he's like a little cartoon that we just don't see any real details for because
Yeah,
he's just black.
exactly. I mean, I think it's maybe easier to think about it rather than black and white. It's almost like shadow and light is like
True.
how the
Yeah.
game style works because there's so much gradation of that. It comes in and comes out at all times. Like
Yes.
the characters in the world themselves aren't black. It's clear that they have some sort of lightness and shades to them, and it gets
Yes.
illuminated from time to time. So it's like we're constantly in this shadow and having the light reveal the world for us.
Yes, thank you. That was even a better of a sort of like a clarification than I could have hoped for. So thank you. Journalist praised the dark presentation, describing the work as comparable to film noir and German expressionism. Limbo's minimal story and game length polarized critics, while some found the open-ended work to have deeper meaning that tied well with the game's mechanics, while others believed the lack of significant plot and abrupt ending detracted from the game. Limbo was the third highest selling game on the Xbox Live Arcade service in 2010, generating around $7.5 million in revenue. It won several awards from industry groups after its release and was named as one of the top games for 2010 by several publications. Playdead's next title, Inside, was released in 2016 and revisited many of the same themes presented in Limbo, and for all intents and purposes is the exact same style of game, a sort of side-scrolling platformer survival game, except that one's a little more explicitly has 3D models, but it is still 2D almost entirely, from what I can remember.
It's like a blend. In moments there are 3D elements because there's a lot more depth. So for
Big
example, like
time.
there's the scene famously like where the dogs are chasing you and you got to get on either side of the fence, these like rabid
Oh, yes,
dogs.
yes,
They
yes.
run around the building back and then come back around, so technically there is that depth of field. Things
Yes.
can come at you from behind the screen, not just from right or left or up or down. But I think Inside is for all intents and purposes like Limbo 2,
Yeah.
and it's clear like at that point they had mastered what they had developed in Limbo 2. I think Inside
Yes.
is probably a better game than Limbo 2, but it's because it was standing on the shoulders of the success of Limbo.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So much that the developers had learned and like it just sort of like just grew from there to make a yeah, successor, a worthy successor. Jason, as far as history and context for Limbo goes, is there anything you want to add that we didn't touch on before we dive into your personal time with it?
No, I think you crushed that.
Yes, getting all the approval I need. Well, let's hear it. We had it teased out a little earlier. How did you discover this game?
Okay, so the year is 2012.
Mm,
You are on a year abroad living in Madrid. You're a little different than an ordinary 21-year-old, right? You think of things a little differently. Like for example, you roll the bottom of the cuff of your jean
Oh,
once or twice.
okay. Now I've got an image.
Yeah. Um, and a lot of the time that I spent when I lived in Madrid for a year was watching movies or listening to podcasts late at night, or if I'm traveling or something like that. And one of those movies that I watched was Indie Game the movie, the
Oh,
documentary.
yes.
Yeah. Do you have much of an experience with this movie? Do you remember watching it?
Yes.
Did it leave an impact?
It did. Well, 3 years ago on our Patreon, we used to do like a weekly bonus show. And for the summer, we did the Summer of Arcade, where we talked about one month we did an episode on each of the games featured in that. And then we did a final one where we watched the movie and talked about it. So I have a little familiarity.
Okay. Yeah, so Indie Game, the movie, if you haven't seen it, it's a great documentary. It basically has three game developer sort of like teams working on their own games. One of them is Braid, which turns out to be, extremely successful. Um, and from that, it just really re-sparked my interest in gaming because at that point, I hadn't really gamed that often in the
Yes.
previous 5 years, besides from like, oh, I'm at a friend's house, I'll play Super Smash Brothers or like this and that. Um, but I was like, I'm a kind of complex young adult who's really sophisticated. These games seem like they might be at my level. So let me give them a chance. You know what I mean? So I got really interested in that entire world
Yeah.
of just independent games of people trying to make uh, games that weren't Call of Duty.
Hmm.
And that, I was just really, really interested in it. And I looked through my Steam history and I found out that I bought it on February 21, 2013. So that would have been like 3 weeks after I moved back home from Spain.
Okay.
I downloaded it pretty much as soon as I probably had the money to buy it, and played it through like instantly in one setting
Oh,
on
wow.
full volume in the dark in my room with an Xbox controller that is USB that you can port into your computer.
Yes.
Because at the time, my favorite controller was the Xbox 360. I love the PS5 controller now, but um, anyway, and it was just an absolutely incredible immersive experience. Like
Yeah.
it has no music, right? There's no music in the game. It's only natural sound, and there's so little of it that every tiny footstep, every creak, it just feels, like very very immersive and epic in a
Yes.
way that games with scores can be or can sort of distract away from.
Yeah.
Especially if you're trying to create an atmosphere, right?
Yes. And something that Limbo, I mean, to that point too, every little noise really makes its impact and it has the space to do so because it is so limited.
Yeah. It has the space to make the sound and then the echo. And then like you hear it fade, you hear it come in a lot more of a like a complex way than you normally would. You're paying attention to
Yes,
your surroundings and it just makes you feel like you are the boy. I know
absolutely.
that it's a 2D side scroller. It's not actually immersive in terms of its like design style, but like it really does feel like it in that like what when you play it. At least it did for me big time. And it
Yes.
really inspired me to think about like, wow, these guys made this on a shoestring budget with like a little bit of investment. I know that they got some grant from the Danish government as well, like an arts council there. And they made something that has like impacted me way, way more than all these other games like that are hundreds of millions of dollars to make or like to develop and or tens of millions, I should say. Um, and it made me really inspired and it kind of made me want to pursue like a career in the arts, honestly.
Yes. Wow.
Because I had wanted to, it's one of those things like I grew up in Sydney. It's not a show business place. That's why people like Margot Robbie, your close friend,
Yes, of
they end up
course.
moving to Los Angeles because like there's just not that much. It's not that it doesn't exist, there's just not a lot of it. And when there's not
Sure.
a lot of it, it means that you're probably not going to do much of it. So um it was so inspiring to see people making art for adults and like doing something that was going to leave you with like a real emotional sort of journey and impact. And I think that the story, even though it's not, you know, it's not like you get any information of the backstory. I still found myself by the end, by the final scene, when he sees his sister, we find out it's his sister, and she gasps for a second and then it turns, incredibly moving. And I was like very emotional, very, very emotionally impacted by it. And it was probably also the first time that I'd been able to enjoy like a horror property. Were you a horror kid? Were you someone who like give me the scariest movie you got type of thing?
I avoided a lot of that stuff for the most part, and it's only in recent years that I've like started to expose myself to more out of a curiosity.
Yeah. I mean, I was definitely the same way. Like I was scared of like the Simpsons Halloween episode, like a bunch of those was like, okay, now all right, let's go back to Doe.
Yeah.
I caramba, remember that.
Go back to the non-scary stuff, Bart getting choked.
Yeah. Let's go back to the non-scary stuff. Homer working at a nuclear power plant in the middle of a small town. Yeah, so horror just wasn't really something that I was able to digest. I was such a scaredy cat. I remember watching like Goosebumps movies. I would read Goosebumps, but like there was the Night of the Haunted Mask. There were a couple times where the mask like takes over the face and then like becomes one with the face, and then they're, you know, a freaky person. And I remember just being like 7 and thinking like, well, my life is over. You know, all innocence that I had up until now is completely gone, and the world is a dark place, and I'll never see it any other way.
Yes, because that could happen to me, and it probably will. And
it will. I'll make my peace. I'll make my goodbyes. I'll get my affairs in order. So over time, you know, I got a little better at it and that kind of stuff. But I still would never want to watch a horror movie. I'd always be like, why would you want that? You know, it's like when people like, I want an extra hot chili, like in my car or something like that. I'm like, I'm a medium guy.
Yeah.
You know? Give me that medium. But because the way that Limbo was made was that the horror aspects were so, in my opinion, little to do with making you, the gamer, scared, and so much to do with just being an obstacle that this character has to face and face that fear as the character. It felt so much more organic, and it made me able to like go through these horror elements in a way that I think in movies can sometimes come off as like cheap.
Yes.
Or like you're playing for the gasps, you're playing for like that. I want you to tell your friend, oh, that was so crazy when that happened. Whereas with Limbo, it's like, you know, the giant spider is obviously the famous figure, right? But the spider is the main character of their own story. The spider was just hanging out. They were in their own sack. We were kind of interrupting the spider. You know what I mean? And it was extremely frightening and disturbing, but not because like, you know, it's trying to make you the gamer constantly jump scared. It's because no, like you as a character, as this boy, like you've got to get through this spider in order to eventually get to meet your sister, to the point where you have to pull off the spider's legs in order to use them in the game and use the body of the spider to like roll on it. So yeah, using like, it's the things that you fear are going to be tools for you to eventually overcome being in this purgatory state is like a very beautiful way to treat the horror genre.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. Were these thoughts that it sounds like you have to have revisited this game since the first time? Is it something
I've played it before for sure? Yeah,
yes,
but I don't tend to replay. The thing that I did the most when I was younger was The Simpsons. I had VHS tapes of every single episode that I could get my hands on. So in Australia, there's only 3 channels that are free, and because one of those channels is co-owned by Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox, The Simpsons was on syndication in Australia more than anywhere else.
Wow.
I think it's Australia and Ireland had like the most Simpsons. So there were every single night 3 episodes, 6 p.m., 7:30 p.m., 8:30 p.m., like almost every night for like a long period of time. So Australians of my generation are obsessed with The Simpsons, you know, and I'm definitely one of them. So I would watch those over and over and over and over again. But since then, I haven't really been one to like replay a game or replay a movie or rewatch a show really that much. Like it's very, very rare, just because I feel like, oh my God, all my friends are telling me to, it's like you with Disco Elysium. All my friends are telling me to watch this or play this. I don't really have the time to be like revisiting something that I already know what's up.
Yes.
But Limbo, I did replay again because first of all, it's mercifully very short. It's
Yeah.
like if you're good at it, you can kind of get through it in like a few hours. Um, so I don't think I was thinking about this while I was playing it. I think
Yeah.
at the time I was just simply hit by it.
Yes.
Like sometimes you'll watch a movie or listen to an album or something, and you're just like, I'm sure at some point I'll be able to verbalize what I'm feeling, but right now I just know that I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
struck, I'm
You're
shook.
truly letting something wash over you. We've talked about improv a lot on this episode. I do the same thing watching improv shows, which so often I am like moving in my head and I'm playing in my head too of like, okay, so we're
Mm,
at this point in the opening. Ooh, I'll hold that premise because that's what I would initiate, and this is how I would do it, or this is how I might respond to something, as opposed to just watching and enjoying and letting something wash over you and truly experiencing something rather than like
yeah.
doing mental work in your head too. And it sounds like that's kind of how you've described this first experience with Limbo, which is just doing.
Yeah. Yeah. There was this quote I read from this chef a while ago. I can't remember which chef it was, but it was that their favorite food was ice cream. And it's because like ice cream waits for no man. Like it's melting.
Hmm.
Like you're going to enjoy it now in the moment, have a great time with it, or you won't. The ice cream doesn't care. It's going
Yeah.
away. So like you have to be there. You have to be present. And that's how I feel when I play soccer as well. It's like that's what I love about playing team sports. It's like the game is moving, whether you like it or not. So you have the choice to participate, you have the choice not to, but you've always got to be present, or else like you won't be in it. And when I played Limbo, it was like that. Like I wasn't thinking about the meta of the game. I wasn't analyzing it. I
Yes.
was just like fully in it. I'm like this boy. This is me. I'm in this world. I don't like it any more than you do. We got to get out of here. We're in this weird purgatory. And really good art for me should be like that. And I think also we have a duty as gamers and consumers to sort of give the art a chance to like make us believe in that art. You know what I mean? Like, I think if you're too analytical going into it, or even walking out of it or leaving it, it can sort of like you're almost it's sort of like someone going into a magic show and being like, well, I know it's fake. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I know, the magician knows that's not the point. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
we're here to have fun. It's a show,
It's
you
not
know?
necessarily like a suspension of disbelief, but it's just kind of meeting the like whatever you're doing, the experience where it's at, sort of.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like I remember when Everything Everywhere All at Once came out, right? At the end of that movie, I was like, holy fucking shit. I was so blown
Yeah.
away by it. Like I
Same.
personally loved it.
Me
But
too.
then but then it became cool to not like it. Like on Letterboxd, it became very cool to be like, well, actually, it wasn't that fun. Like it wasn't that blah 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 blah. And that really bums me out for them,
Yeah.
because it's like I don't care if a movie is technically perfect in every way. What I want is for you to bring me into a story and really impact me and make me feel stuff. Like I don't care how good something is as much as I care about like how do I feel when I'm playing it and when I leave it. To me, a really good game is something that like makes me think about it. Like I have fun while playing it. That's the game part. And then it like does something for me as a person.
Yes.
That's the art part. Games are unique in that way, in that it's both. Like I think like Call of Duty or something like that is in its own lane. It's not
Yeah.
trying to do what other games are trying to do.
Yes.
And I think that that's fair. It's like going to McDonald's. Like you don't rate McDonald's compared to a restaurant that's more local and seasonal and like trying to do good stuff. But I think like we owe it to games like Limbo to like give it the chance to to tell its story the way that it wants to tell its story. And if it doesn't
Absolutely.
work for you, that's totally fine. But it did for me big time.
Totally. Yeah, it's one of those games too that I think like I feel like the people that I've heard from who've also played it have had a similar experience, and I don't even know if would all have approached it the same way or from the same. Like I bet I could find people who played it who were working that analytical side of their brain the whole time and also got such like an appreciation out of it. Because not we're all not going to approach it the same way. But I think I had an experience like you too, where I don't play games like this. It was the first type. I mean, I've played other cinematic platformers or side scrollers, but I've not really played ones that are so focused on or that have such an emphasis of survival, I guess, or horror, or and it's one of those things where I stopped thinking about the escape of it all, and I felt like I was like trying to keep this kid alive, which of course he dies thousands of times when I play,
Yeah.
but there is like a care that I had for the character, and it made me feel. That's one way that it made me feel, was just wanting to help this kid, similar to Inside. I don't know what's going on with these kids in these games, but I just want them to be safe. That's where I ended up with a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the stakes are high when you play
Yeah,
it if you invest in it emotionally. And that's what makes every death so painful because yeah, like you said, like, I mean, I'm not a great gamer, I'm an okay gamer, and I died a billion times playing the game. And that's the
yeah.
only way that you can, that you can get through, which is also like, I think part of the beauty of the story, which is like you have to suffer deeply in order to be able to make progress. Like there's a sense of ego death and literal death in this game.
There is.
Yeah.
We've gotten so much from you about, like, I feel like I've almost like filled my cup of what you appreciated and received from the game. We don't have to finish talking about that, but I do want to go back into more of the context for you of how
Mhm.
you discovered it and what you and like just sort of your surroundings when you played the game. I want to start, Jason, with scene painting that room you started to describe for us where you played it in the dark. Can you tell me about where were you living? What was the room
Yeah.
like? Yeah, just paint it for me a little bit.
So I've just been living on my own in Spain, and then I'm doing the exact opposite thing, which is moving back in with my mom in Sydney, in Coogee. And I have a tiny room, enough for like a bed and a desk with a computer and nothing else really. And I have posters that are obviously unframed of, let's see, what would have been on my wall. Daft Punk would have been on my wall.
These are new
Um,
posters for you.
for sure. Yeah. This is
Yes.
me coming home and being like, okay, well, I'm back home. Got to get them up. Got to
Okay,
like feel
cool.
like something. But not that much stuff up because, I wasn't at the time worrying too much about interior decoration or whatever. So it's a pretty bare bones 21-year-old's room who tail between their legs has moved back in with their parents because they literally have to because they've just moved back from overseas. Um,
And
and,
really quick, I
sorry, go
want to.
on.
No, you're okay. What you said you were abroad in Spain? Were you just
Yeah.
like studying? Were you just traveling?
Yeah.
Can I get a little context there too?
Yeah, so I did a double bachelor's degree I went to journalism school and it
Mm,
combined with international studies. And
okay.
international studies is like sort of like international relations and politics mixed with a language.
Mm.
And part of it is you have to live in another country for a year and pass exams in another language.
Oh,
And I didn't really do that. I mean, I barely I went to class a little bit. I had some fun times for sure, but I spent a lot of time just simply traveling through Europe and using my educational stipend to like visit Finland, Norway, just go as broad as I could
yeah.
and do the bare minimum to like skate by, at
Yes,
the school.
absolutely.
And Madrid's an awesome city. It's so cool. So I got to check that out a lot. I'm a big soccer guy, so football is like religion there. So that was really amazing. Um, and by the time I got back, yeah, I thought I was going to be a journalist, and I was like that was how I began my career.
Hmm.
But like when I was discovering indie games and like Limbo and stuff like that, that's when I started to also be thinking like, well, what if I actually chased my dreams of like, you know, writing for The Simpsons seasons 3 through 8, which
Yeah.
obviously, without going back through time, you can't really do. And that same year that I got back, I joined the Review Society, which was like in Australia and in the UK, there's like an annual sort of sketch show making
Oh,
fun of the university called
okay.
a review, like REVUE. So yeah, I wrote and performed on that, and that was like my beginning into like performing. Because
Oh,
before that, I'd
wow.
only just written. I wasn't like really into acting or stage stuff. And yeah, discovering Limbo and getting into like the world of indie gaming and immersing myself in these stories, I think was part of me discovering, oh, actually, I kind of want to do this, like do this, like for real.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
And if we can put a point on it too, if there's a not a point, but what was it? Was it just like the creativity of the game, or playing something that you had never that you that had that was accomplishing different things in games that you had played before that sort of opened you up to wonder what you could have for yourself? Is that what the connection is there?
Yeah, I think like because I hadn't gamed in such a long time or whatever,
Yeah.
I think there was an element to it that I thought it was like gaming is something that you do for fun. And it's kind of for kids and some adults play it, but like it's not, it's the kind of thing that you just leave behind or
Yes.
something like that. And uh the way that Limbo was made, I felt like was so inspiring in a way that
I see.
I was
Yes.
just like, well, there is so much to the world of making art of that I shouldn't leave behind. Like I shouldn't just leave my like silly comedic childhood behind and because that's I was like a goose, I was a class clown, always getting in trouble for like trying to make people laugh and stuff like that.
Of course.
And I was like, no, it's time for me to be a journalist. The world needs more journalists taking uh police press releases and just copy pasting them.
Yeah.
That's what the world needs more of, right? Um,
I'm so glad you
but
said it because I've been waiting for a guest to say that because I really agree with that.
yeah, and most people, because on the podcast it's cut off, but because I've got the full view, the
Yes.
Blue Lives Matter tattoo on Connor's thigh is like
Yeah.
poking out. He always makes sure to wear shorts short enough so that we can all see it.
Yeah. I don't
Um,
bring it up, but you know it's there.
yeah. We all know. He tells us pre-pod as well, but yeah, I just feel like there's so little chance in Sydney to think of yourself as like, oh, maybe you can go chase like a creative career or something like
Yeah.
that. And Limbo was so impactful to me that it literally, I think, sparked the idea that I could, you know, make or that art was worth making.
Yes.
Like there was stuff out there that could really make people feel this.
Mm.
It's like the feeling that I had at the end of the game. I was like, I want to make people feel like that.
Yes.
I want to have people feel like that. That's for example, like why I do comedy, right? Like I borderline hate being on stage. And I started doing stand up 11 years ago. And I'm not one of those people that's like, give me the fucking mic. I'm going to rock the fuck out of it. Like there are some people that I watch like that. Like John Gabrus is one, an improviser, or Rory Scovel or something like that, where it's just like, okay, that person like should be on stage like at all
Sure.
times. And I don't identify with that. I'm not one of those people, but I really respect it. Um, but the thought that I could do this for real, like, yeah, Limbo, I think definitely inspired me. It was like, I do comedy because I want to make people feel like how they feel when you really crush a joke or a scene. And
Yes.
I want to make art because I want people to feel like how I felt at the end of Limbo.
Yeah.
And I also want to be part of the wider movement of art to like lift the quality high. Like I think like Limbo has as much in common with like Parasite as it does with like my favorite album of all time, Merryweather Post Pavilion by Animal Collective, right? Like all of these things I think are more similar to each other than Limbo is to, you know, I don't know, like
We're gonna
Far
think of
Cry
an
3
example. We're gonna think of one. What'd you
or
say?
like Far Cry or like or I don't know, like something that is meant to be completely different. Like they're both games, but they're so different in terms
Yes.
of how they make you feel, what the point of it is.
Yes.
Um,
That's amazing. I love that
yeah.
just you were talking about feeling inspiration from Disco Elysium much earlier in the podcast, but it's cool that that can be that was an echo of you being inspired by Limbo and just what it could just it made you just think about so much else.
Yeah, just like this is what we should be doing. We should be trying to make stuff to make people feel something, to make
Hmm.
people like have a new perspective on life. It's like when you put down a great book, that's like how it should feel when you make something. And I think with puzzle platformers, for the most part, it's like people treat it and they make it the way that you do Sudoku. It's like, this is to be on the bus on the way to a job that I don't care about. That's like what puzzle platformers are. Or they're so hard that it's about, can you beat this really hard thing? You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
It's not so much about like the play. Like, what are you learning while you're playing the game? Like, how are you feeling when you're playing the game? I don't want to beat something because it's hard and be like, I beat this hard thing. Like, I don't give a fuck about that. I think it can feel nice it can feel accomplishing.
Definitely.
Like I found that with Horizon Forbidden West that
Hmm.
I finished last year. And that was a little bit both. It's like the story is really cool and it's really hard. And that's great. And I don't mind doing this hard stuff because it rewarded me. And I'm
Yes.
sure many people listening, they were like, that game's not hard. But for me, it was, there
Yeah.
were many moments where I was like, that's pretty hard. Um, so I liked that it wasn't arbitrarily either difficult or not difficult. It was just a great sort of story. It also like when there are games like, for example, Portal 2, which I personally love and I think is really funny. It is still just like a puzzle after puzzle after puzzle after puzzle. And when there are games like that, or for example, movies like that, where they're like, I've got you now, Mr. Bond, and they keep letting them go.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're like this too, because you've got like the improv, like the comedy brain. But I'm always like, wow, these evil people really spent a lot of time and money developing password protected steel doors or like a wooden gate that only opens when you line it up in a shadow. Like, did
Yes,
they
yes.
send off to someone for design options? Did they like approve something and send it back? Was there a vendor?
What was
Like,
the
are there
process for
minions?
this?
Yeah, what was the process on it? Do they have a factory? Do they develop in house? Like, where do they get the steel from? Like, I'm always thinking about stuff like that when there's like arbitrarily enormous obstacles to get somewhere.
Yes.
Because I'm always like, well, so this bad guy is an engineer and
Yeah.
also like an architect and like a robotics expert and this and that.
Mhm.
And with Limbo, it wasn't really like it was all so it felt so organically part of the world,
Yes.
you know? Like it
Absolutely.
wasn't just like, oh, they're just giving me another level to beat. It was like, no, this is like an extended, if it's a side scroller, this is like the longest, most horizontally long, like single like horizon that you could have, and we're
Truly.
just trying to work our way through it. It felt really organic.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, there was one early review that I saw that one of the developers commented on that a reviewer was like, every time I learn a new mechanic, it's like I'm never going to use it again. Like that's really frustrating. And I was like, that's awesome because like it's so much more like what it would be like,
Sure.
you know? Like why
Yes.
would I have to like do jump, jump, dash, jump like 30 more times?
Yeah.
Because like that's not how the story is like should be told.
Yeah, and the
Um,
game it's one of the strengths of the game is that we're actually going to touch on this in the fun facts, but that the game continues to evolve and doesn't reuse sort of like similar puzzle solutions very often at all.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah,
I like plenty of games that do that or that are like iterating on the same
totally.
idea, but
Portal 2 is one of them.
yes, oh my gosh, it's the as great of an example as that as we can probably
Yeah,
find.
but I love it though.
Yeah, same here. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's my top 10 personal favorite games ever. I couldn't be
there
in
you go.
agreement more.
There you go.
Jason, I've got a couple questions for you before we close this out. First of which, is there any little detail about this game or a moment in it that you'd like to touch on? Because I know we've talked about the game in such broad strokes, and we've talked
Yeah.
about a couple specific points, but yeah, is there anything you haven't gotten to just highlight really quick?
Wow, that's a great point. I don't know if there's anything specific. I
Sure.
mean, what I what I appreciate is how someone who's like I consider myself kind of like a dumb smart guy or like a smart dumb guy, like however you say that, because like
Yeah.
I feel like I have a pretty good sense of like how to play games, but then every so often, like I'll be playing a game and I'm like, I have no fucking idea what I'm supposed to do here or something like that. Like I cheat all the time. Like not it's not my first port of call, but I do need to in order to beat some games. And what I really appreciated about this game is that everything that you need is on the screen.
Hmm.
There's no like I'm being cheeky as a developer and I'm trying to make it so that you can't finish this game. All of the elements in the world serve the puzzle solving of
Yes.
it, which I really appreciate it. And I think for a dumb smart guy like me, like someone who tries to figure stuff out but is kind of dumb sometimes, I think it's the right amount of difficult. Um, and that's something that I really appreciate. Because like for
Yeah.
example, something like Super Meat Boy, it's like I just simply can't beat it. It's just too hard,
Yeah.
you know, and stuff like that. Um, so I think the balance of the difficulty of it served the impact that the story had on me so well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, overcoming a challenge that you know is within your grasp, but you're not quite there yet is one of the
Mm-hmm.
most satisfying feelings playing a game.
For sure. Yeah. That must be so difficult as a level designer to be like, oh, like I don't want them to beat this too easy. I don't want this to be too hard. Finding that balance must be like pretty challenging.
It's got to be one of the greatest challenges in game design. That's incredible. Well, before we go to some fun post-show segments that I have prepared for you, Jason, will you do me a favor and just try your best to like wrap up what place Limbo holds for you? Even though you pretty much you kind of gave me a quote earlier, but I'll let you do it.
Yeah, I think in a world full of art and media that is meant to sell you things or is catering to children or to like the lowest common denominator, I think Limbo represents to me, people taking a swing at something that could have massively failed because it doesn't have any of the elements that typically are successful in a game. They really back themselves, and to me, Limbo serves as a bit of a north star of a reminder of like what is possible to make people feel with like very little resource, relatively speaking. And yeah, it's definitely one of the things that is like really special to me in a way that it inspires me to make my own art. It
Yes.
makes me want everybody to do that. Like I want everybody to whatever it is that they are doing artistically. I want them to be like giving to people what Limbo gave to me at the end of playing that game.
Amazing. The perfect wrap up. Jason, thank you for bringing on this game to discuss today. It was awesome hearing from you on your experience.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
You bet. But like I said, we got a couple of fun things to do before we go. The first thing is I'm going to lead you into the Fact Me by Your Game segment, and that's just where I share a fun fact with my guest about the game that they brought on today. Jason, today my fact comes from a video titled How Limbo Was Made and Why the Team Went Their Separate Ways. It's a YouTube video by user That Guy Glenn. I'll put a link in the show notes as well in the citations at the bottom so that people can watch it because there's so much more than what I'm about to share. But what I have titled, I kind of previewed it earlier, is 70% of the original content in Limbo was stripped out. Now, in an effort to have puzzles in Limbo feel distinct, roughly 70% of the original content of the game was removed. Playdead wanted each puzzle to be based on a unique concept, and therefore if two puzzles appeared differently like visually, but were solved using a similar puzzle solution strategy, the developers would pick the best one and scrap the other one from the final game. This is kind of, I just brought up a point about this on how the game, so much of the game is unique and how it's not all reusing the same solutions. You gave like a puzzle platformer example of like jump, jump, dash or something like that.
Yeah.
It's amazing how they're able to accomplish this. Arndt Jensen, the game's director, was quoted as saying, this is from an IGN article, it was really important to keep it fresh throughout the game. I always said it, being the gameplay, has to be unpredictable. You must never know what happens in the next 20 seconds. It's more important to have the impact and for people to see the game through to the end than it is to have more content for content's sake. That last 3 words was editorializing by me, but that seemed to be what he meant.
Yeah.
Again, quote from an IGN interview that is cited in this video by That Guy Glenn. But yeah, just interesting, and I feel like they do such a similar. They definitely kept that principle when they designed Inside as well. It's something I felt.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's such a great lesson for anyone who makes stuff too, is that you don't just need to make something bigger. Bigger is not better.
Yeah.
For someone making a short film or an EP or anything like that, it should probably be tighter than normal, right? Like it should be getting a bang for your buck.
Yeah.
If you're not going to give someone a 3-hour epic, make whatever it is, like in terms of a movie, make whatever short film it is, like really hit.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with this game. It's not going to be 100 hours, but make sure that like, I mean, look, in Horizon Forbidden West, like I wish it was half the time,
Yes.
to be honest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of like walking or making food that like could serve you, could not serve you. Some people love that part of the game and they spend hundreds of hours just doing stuff like that. But yeah, I love like the curtness of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they did go their separate ways, which is exactly, by the way, what happened with Disco Elysium.
Yes.
My feed is full of people using the term spiritual successor to Disco Elysium because there are like 3 of them in production at the same time from like different people who left the company at different times.
Goodness. This all too tying back to I was discussing the history and context of this game or presenting it, rather, the criticism, criticism that the game received about like not being longer or whatever. And it's like, well, like you said, longer, bigger isn't always better, especially for a game like this. It feels like this specific type of game is so much more impactful and effective in a smaller package. That is the end of the Fact Me by Your Game segment. I just had the one this week, and I'll lead us into the final one, Jason. This is the game recommendations, and this is a segment where I force a tie-in on this podcast to the movie Call Me by Your Name, where I am going to treat Limbo as your passionate summer fling in Italy. But unfortunately, like the movie, it's not going to work out between you two. And even though you're in a period of heartbreak, deep heartbreak of this loss, I am going to try to get you back out there and introduce you to 3 potential new flings that all have something in common with Limbo. And it feels like you're ready.
I'm feeling myself. All right.
Good. Sometimes we get a more tepid response of someone really having to push themselves, but you're ready to be out there.
You know what? Fuck Limbo. I actually take back everything that I've said this past hour and a half. Let's go into something new.
Okay, well, then it doesn't have to be that extreme, but I get it. So I
agree with you. We should never play Limbo again. Let's go ahead.
Again, not what I was saying, but I totally understand. I understand why you feel that way right now.
I've just written a letter to Steam asking them to remove it.
Oh my gosh. Good luck with that, pal. 3 recommendations that I have for you today, Jason. The first of which is if what you got out of this game is that you loved it's the cinematic platformer nature, and you want another one, a more action focused survival platformer, but you're a 90s kid, baby. You want something from the 90s. I'll present a game called Heart of Darkness. Do you know this game?
I've never played it, but I've heard of it before.
It's as I described. It's a game originally on the PlayStation. That's what I have it on. And you play as a boy trying to, I believe, save your dog in this like alien other world. It's very similar to Another World or Out of This World. But I remember as a kid, this game I would play it at a friend's house. We talked about playing other consoles you didn't have growing up at buddies' places. This game scared the hell out of me because it's so violent in ways that different than this game is violent, the Limbo is. But anyway, if you want a little more action to add on to the layer of what you liked about Limbo, Heart of Darkness is a recommendation. My second one for you is if you want to color in your black and white aesthetic, I'll recommend a game called Chicory, A Colorful Tale. And this is a game where truly the whole thing is like black and white. It's kind of like a coloring book, but it's like an action adventure sort of top-down Zelda-like. But yeah, if you're turning a new leaf, you're like, black and white, not for me, let's color this baby in. You want a little almost catharsis with that. Chicory, A Colorful Tale is your recommendation. And lastly, Jason, if you're walking away from Limbo and you feel cheated because you're like, that game had nothing to do with Limbo. It had nothing to do with balancing the dance Limbo. Would you call it a dance? The movement Limbo? The activity?
I think it depends how you do it. You know what I mean? If you're doing it rhythmically,
I guess it could be a dance. I'll say the activity Limbo, the act of bending your top half backwards and walking under a certain height where a pole is. If this game wasn't what you hoped for, if you really feel cheated, I'll recommend a game that will let you use the Wii balance board, and that's Wii Ski and Snowboard. There's no way you're going to know about this game, but I
didn't even know that exists, the Wii balance board.
It was something that they introduced with the Wii Fit phenomenon, where people would stand on this balance board that would like weigh them, and you would do activities on it. And this one, it's a snowboarding game, so you can really get, all the movements you might have hoped you were going to get with Limbo and with Wii. And it's a lot of Wii games, like understandably, even if they're using the word Wii, the traditional W-E, they spell it W-I-I. This one, for some reason, doesn't do that. This is just W-E, ski, and snowboard.
Huh. Interesting.
So,
wow. Well, thank you so much for these recommendations. I actually own Chicory and I haven't played it yet. So I'm going to bump it up to my next played list.
I bet as much as like sometimes these, like the last one, are just complete joke recommendations. I think you might actually really enjoy that. And it is an indie title. So, hey, we're getting back to our indie focused guy here.
Yeah, yeah. Very
Um,
cool. Well, thank you for the rec.
you bet. Just to
Even if you
recap
meant
that,
to mock me.
what'd you say?
Even if you were trying to mock me, I still
Oh, I
recommend.
was so much. To recap this for the listener, we have Heart of Darkness, Chicory, A Colorful Tale, and We Ski and Snowboard. Jason, that'll do it for the game recommendations, and that will actually bring us to the end of the podcast. So before we go, thanks again for taking the time today to discuss this meaningful game with me. It was a blast having you on today, dude.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm such a fan of you, this pod, and all the Call Me By Your Name is.
Huge.
Uh, Such a beautiful community. So thank you so much for having.
Absolutely. On the way out today, is there anything you want to plug? Do you want the people to find you on the internet anywhere?
If you want, you can find me at Jason J Cohn COHN on Instagram if you like. But
Great.
otherwise, no, you can live your own lives.
Awesome. Well, I'll put a link to your Instagram in the show notes just in case someone's like, I gotta go follow this guy.
I have to talk to this guy. I have
Yes,
to.
it's a must be. People flying into your DMs. Well, to close this out, I'll just go ahead and list a number of plugs of my own. Of course, what Jason listed and what I'm about to list are going to be in a link in the show notes. The cover art for Call Me By Your Game is done by the artist Glenn J. You can find him and his great work on his Instagram, featured in the show notes. The show is produced, edited, and the original music is done by Jeremy Schmidt. If you want to thank him for his work on this podcast, you can go and listen to his show, Video Games, a Comedy Show, wherever you get your podcasts. It's also part of this network, more of a roundtable style video game podcast than this one-on-one intimate interview. You can also follow the show like on a lot of places on social media, including Blue Sky, Instagram, and on YouTube. And if you're not already subscribed to our YouTube, I highly recommend it. You can get video episodes of this podcast every week, including our bonus co-op series that is a Patreon exclusive for a week at a certain tier. Those video versions come out on YouTube as well. So if you want to hear more of a roundtable style group episode, that's listed there as well. You can also follow the podcast network that this show helped start and is a part of, Super NPC Radio, all over the same social media platforms as well, including our Patreon at patreon.com/supernpcradio. I already listed a bunch of the bonus stuff that we do over there, but if you want to support us and get bonus video game podcasts, you don't get enough on the free feeds, check us out there, including the Super NPC Games Club free feed. It's wherever you get your podcasts. It's not on the Patreon. Our old series dropped there. I was telling Jason about the Super Mario 64 series that came out, I think, over a year ago now on the free feed, and we're about to debut, well, by the time you're listening to this, our Resident Evil 2 remake series has been airing there, so go check that out if you want a book club style podcast to listen to. And lastly, you can follow me on social media as well, on Blue Sky, Instagram, and on Twitch, where I stream sometimes. I've been on a little bit of a break, but I plan to get back. And yeah, that's all the plugs that I've got for today. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Call Me By Your Game. We will see you on the next one.